You told me she was safe. Stop lying to me! Who are you? How do you know my mother? Why have you been following me?
Your parents died because of me.
What did you just say?
I tried to save them, but I was too late.
But before I tell you how we got here, let me take you back. Ada thought this would be the happiest day of her life. A dream job, a fresh start, a chance to make her grandmother proud. She believed her first day at Lawson Global Holdings would be just like everyone else's. Meet new people, learn the rules, and try not to make any mistakes. She had no idea. Before that day was over, the most feared billionaire CEO would look at her, and nothing in her life would ever be the same. Have you ever wanted something so badly that every rejection felt like someone was slowly breaking your heart? That was Ada's life. At just 24 years old, she had done everything people told her to do. She studied hard, stayed out of trouble, graduated from university, and believed that once she got her degree, life would finally become easier. But life had other plans. Every morning, Ada woke up before the sun, not because she had somewhere to go, but because she refused to give up. She would wash up, sit at the small wooden table in her grandmother's living room, open her old laptop, and search for another job. One more application, one more email, one more chance. She had stopped counting after sending more than 50 applications. Some companies never replied. Some invited her for interviews, smiled at her, shook her hand, and promised to get back to her. They all said the same thing: "We'll call you." They never did. Every rejection hurt a little more than the last. But what hurt Ada the most wasn't the rejection itself. It was walking back home and pretending everything was okay. She didn't want her grandmother to worry. So every evening, before opening the front door, she would force a smile onto her face. But grandmothers have a special gift. They always know. Ada lived with her grandmother, Mama Ngozi, in a small rented apartment in Lagos. The house wasn't fancy. The paint on the walls had started to fade. The chairs had been repaired more times than anyone could remember. The ceiling fan made a funny noise every time it turned. Still, it was home. And inside that little house, there was more love than money could ever buy. That evening, Mama Ngozi served dinner. 2 small plates of rice, a little stew, just enough for both of them. Ada quietly noticed that her grandmother had given her the larger portion again. She smiled. "Grandma, you barely served yourself." Mama Ngozi laughed softly. "My child, I'm not really hungry." Ada knew that wasn't true. She also knew there was no point arguing. That was how they took care of each other. By pretending they needed less so the other person could have more. As they finished eating, Mama Ngozi reached across the table and gently held Ada's hands. "My daughter, don't let these disappointments change your heart. God's time is never late." Ada smiled. She wanted to believe those words. She really did. But after so many disappointments, hope was becoming harder to hold on to. The next morning looked just like every other Monday. The birds were singing outside. Motorcycles raced down the street. Neighbors greeted one another as they headed to work. Nothing felt different. But sometimes, the biggest moments in our lives begin on the most ordinary mornings. Ada was still arranging her CV on the table when her phone suddenly rang. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. She frowned. For a moment, she almost ignored it. Most unknown numbers only brought more disappointment. But something inside her whispered, "Answer it." She picked up the phone. "Hello?" a cheerful voice replied. "Good morning. Am I speaking with Miss Ada Okafor?" "Yes, this is Ada." "Congratulations. We're calling from Lawson Global Holdings. We're pleased to inform you that you've been selected for the graduate trainee position." Everything around Ada suddenly became quiet. The sound of the birds disappeared. The traffic outside faded away. For a few seconds, she couldn't even breathe. "Hello? Miss Ada, are you still there?" She blinked. "Oh, yes. Yes, I'm here. We'll be expecting you on Monday for your orientation. Welcome to the Lawson family." The call ended. Ada stared at her phone. She read the call log. She looked at the ceiling. Then she looked at her phone again. Was this really happening? Suddenly? She screamed. Mama Ngozi rushed out of her room. "Ada, what happened?" Ada couldn't speak. She simply ran to her grandmother, wrapped her arms around her, and handed her the phone with trembling hands. Mama Ngozi listened as the caller repeated the good news. Before the call ended, tears were already rolling down the old woman's cheeks. She hugged Ada tightly. I told you God's time would come." The two women stood there, laughing and crying at the same time. For the first time in many months, their tiny home was filled with something stronger than fear. Hope. That evening, Ada carefully ironed her cream blouse. She polished her black shoes until they shined. She checked her handbag. Employment letter, notebook, pen, national ID. Everything was ready. She stood in front of the small mirror one last time and smiled at her reflection. "This is your chance, Ada," she whispered. "Don't waste it." She turned off the light and went to bed with a heart full of excitement. She believed she was preparing for the first day of her dream job. She had no idea. She was also walking toward the biggest secret of her life. That Monday morning, Ada left home earlier than she needed to. She wasn't taking any chances. She checked her handbag one last time before stepping outside. Employment letter, notebook, pen, national ID. Everything was there. Mama Ngozi walked her to the gate and gently adjusted the collar of her cream blouse. "You look beautiful," she said with a smile. Ada laughed softly. "I hope they think so too." Her grandmother placed both hands on her shoulders. "Just be yourself. That's enough." Ada nodded, hugged her tightly, and climbed into a taxi. As the car pulled away, she looked back through the rear window. Her grandmother was still standing there, smiling and silently praying. The journey to Victoria Island took almost an hour. Traffic was already building across Lagos. Street traders walked between cars. Danfo buses fought for space on the road. Motorcycles squeezed through impossible gaps. Ada barely noticed any of it. She kept staring at the email on her phone. She still couldn't believe she had been hired by one of the biggest companies in the country. When the taxi finally stopped, she slowly stepped out. Then she looked up. The building stood proudly against the morning sky. Its tall glass walls reflected the sunlight so brightly that Ada had to shield her eyes. Luxury cars drove through the main gate. Smartly dressed employees walked confidently into the building. For a brief moment, she forgot to move. "This place is beautiful," she whispered. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, smiled to herself, then walked through the glass entrance. The lobby was unlike anything she had ever seen. The marble floor shone like a mirror. Beautiful African paintings decorated the walls. Fresh flowers filled the room with a gentle scent. The air conditioning made the entire building feel calm and peaceful despite the busy morning. People walked past carrying laptops and files. Everyone looked focused. Everyone looked important. For the first time that morning, Ada felt nervous. She quietly reminded herself, "You belong here too." The receptionist welcomed her with a warm smile. "Good morning. You must be Miss Ada Okafor." "Yes, ma'am." "Welcome to Lawson Global Holdings." She handed Ada a visitor's pass before printing her employee ID card. Ada held it in both hands, her photograph, her name, the company logo. It finally felt real. She carefully clipped the ID around her neck and smiled. "This is really happening," she whispered. A staff member escorted her to the orientation room where several other new employees were already seated. Some were introducing themselves. Some were checking their phones. Others looked just as nervous as she felt. Ada quietly found an empty seat near the middle of the room. The young woman sitting beside her smiled. "First day?" Ada nodded. "Is it that obvious?" The woman laughed. "I looked exactly the same on my first day." The two of them chatted for a few minutes until the woman suddenly leaned closer. Her smile faded. "Can I give you one piece of advice?" Ada nodded. "Of course." The woman lowered her voice. "If you see the CEO today, just pray he doesn't notice you." Ada frowned. "Why?" Another employee sitting nearby joined the conversation. "Our CEO doesn't smile." "I've worked here for almost 3 years," he said. "I've never seen him laugh." Someone at the back added, "They say he can tell when you're lying just by looking at your face." Another person laughed nervously. "I once saw a manager leave his office shaking." The room filled with soft laughter. Ada smiled too, but she suddenly became even more nervous. Who exactly was this man? A few minutes later, the HR manager walked into the room and welcomed everyone. She explained the company's values, introduced a few department heads, and answered questions from the new employees. Everything was going smoothly. Then the atmosphere changed. Nobody announced his arrival. Nobody needed to. The room simply became quiet. Conversations stopped. Phones disappeared beneath tables. Everyone sat up straighter. Ada looked around in confusion. She hadn't noticed anything, but everyone else had. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, calm, confident. The conference room door opened. Daniel Lawson walked in. He was taller than Ada expected. His charcoal suit looked perfectly tailored. His polished shoes barely made a sound against the marble floor. His face showed no emotion. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply walked into the room with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to prove anything. The executives following behind him remained a few steps back. Even they seemed careful around him. Ada understood immediately why everyone respected him. He had a presence that filled the entire room. Daniel slowly walked past each new employee. He nodded politely once or twice, but said very little. Then he reached Ada and stopped. Everything around him seemed to disappear. He stared at her, not for 1 second, not for 2, long enough for people to begin looking at one another. Ada slowly looked up. Their eyes met. Something changed. The serious expression on Daniel's face slowly disappeared. His breathing became uneven. His eyes widened with disbelief. It was as though he had just seen someone he never expected to see again. For the first time in years, Daniel Lawson smiled. A real smile. Not the polite smile people wear in photographs. Not the smile of a businessman greeting investors. This smile came from somewhere much deeper. The HR manager blinked. One executive quietly frowned. Several employees exchanged confused glances. One whispered, "Have you ever seen him smile before?" Another slowly shook his head. "Never." Daniel took one small step toward Ada. His voice became unusually soft, almost gentle. "Welcome," he paused. "Pumpkin?" Ada's heart skipped. The smile disappeared from her face. She stared at him in complete confusion. "I'm sorry, sir?" Daniel blinked as if he had suddenly remembered where he was. He looked away for a brief second, then cleared his throat. "My mistake." His voice became cold again, professional, controlled. Without another word, he continued walking toward the front of the room. The orientation continued. People took notes. The HR manager kept talking. Executives explained company policies. But Ada heard almost none of it. Only one word echoed inside her mind. Pumpkin. Nobody called her that anymore. Nobody. That nickname belonged to another life, to another time. Her mother had given her that name when she was little. after her mother died,
Pumpkin.
no one had ever called her Pumpkin again. Not once. So, how did Daniel Lawson know it? When the orientation finally ended, employees slowly stood and began leaving the room. The woman sitting beside Ada looked at her with wide eyes. What was that about? Ada shook her head. I honestly don't know. Do you know the CEO? No. Have you ever met him before? Ada hesitated. No, never. The woman looked unconvinced. Then why did he call you Pumpkin? Ada wished she had an answer. She looked toward the front of the room. Daniel was speaking with a group of executives. His face was serious again, cold, calm, as though nothing unusual had happened. But just before he walked away, he looked back, only for a second. Their eyes met again. This time, Ada noticed something she hadn't seen before. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't surprise. It was pain. A deep, quiet, unfinished pain. The kind that doesn't disappear with time. The kind people carry for years. As she watched him disappear down the hallway, one question refused to leave her mind. Who was Daniel Lawson? And why did he know a name? That should have died with her mother?